Okay. Well, welcome, guys. Thanks so much for taking your lunch hour to join me. I'm Carrie Fisher-Stone, and I am the Deputy Executive Director for California's new ABLE program, CalABLE. Going to go over briefly today some of the ins and outs of ABLE accounts and how they work, and then we'll get into the guts of California's program, how folks can enroll, how you can help share information with your constituents as well. I'm a special needs parent. I have a son with autism. I opened a CalABLE account for him, so I can talk a little bit about how I plan to use his account. But in general, since we're such a small group, we can, if you have questions or you need clarification, just stop me, because sometimes it can get a little technical or complicated. And so if there's something that's not quite making sense, just stop and we can answer the question. Okay. I think I'm trying to advance the slide. I want to see if I'm doing something wrong. Are you able to advance the slides over there? That'd be awesome. That's a little arrow button going. Thank you. Perfect. So what was the ABLE Act? This was a federal bill that was signed by President Obama in 2014. And I love the story behind this piece of legislation. I actually got to meet one of the parents who, she's a parent of a little girl with Down syndrome, and essentially said about 10 years ago, they were kind of sitting in around a kitchen table talking about the fact that their children who were dependent on a lot of these critical public benefit programs did not have the same opportunity as their, typically developing siblings to be able to save for the future. That because of the asset caps that are put on by a lot of programs with means tested programs in particular, it was going to perpetually keep their kiddos in a state of poverty. And for them, it was really an equity issue, right? So they actually scribbled down their plan on a napkin, I'm told. And after about 10 years of advocacy, this bill became a reality. And so it was a really big deal. It's been heralded as one of the most important pieces of legislation benefiting the disability community since the Americans with Disabilities Act. The statistics around people with disabilities, again, we in this community face a pretty significant financial burden. People with disabilities are twice as likely to live in poverty as compared to their peers. Many are unbanked, they're unemployed, underemployed, or just otherwise left out of our financial systems. And so the ABLE Act has really been a game changer, because when you're able to save, a lot of other opportunities open up, right? For instance, the ability to go to work, not to mention just the peace of mind that comes with being able to save for the future. We can go to the next slide. Thanks. So what did the law actually do? It added 529A to the IRS code, section 529A. These were modeled after college savings accounts. So a lot of us know college savings accounts as 529 programs. This is 529A for ABLE. And the setup is essentially the same. These are savings and investment accounts for people with disabilities to be able to save for a qualified expense. And they're tax advantaged accounts. So in the case of college savings, the qualified expenses are educational expenses. In the case of ABLE, they're what we call qualified disability expenses, and I'll go into that a little bit more. And by tax advantage, what do we mean? We mean that the monies in these accounts are safe from federal and state income taxes when you are using the monies for these qualified expenses. And that includes the interest that you earn in these accounts. So if you're investing your funds and you're earning interest, that money is also not taxable income, and it's also not counted as income towards any means tested benefit program. But the major benefit of this legislation was that now the monies in these accounts are not counted when you're looking at eligibility for means tested programs. So that includes federal, state, and local means tested programs. They serve as an asset shield. So a lot of us are familiar with the fact that, for instance, with SSI, we have an income test many times and a resource or an asset test. So the monies are protected on that asset side. They're not counted as a resource or looked at as a resource for means tested benefit programs. So yeah. Yeah, I have it coming up in a slide. Good question. Yeah, we'll definitely go into that because it does get a little convoluted. But they're really a game changer in that way because this is really a financial empowerment and independence tool. Really gives people a lot with disabilities a lot more control, a lot more choice over how they save and invest their money and spend their money. And we can go to the next slide. So California's program is called CalABLE. We are one of 42 states that have an ABLE program. The federal law gave individual states the ability to set up their own program. So we also passed a state statute here in California to establish the California ABLE Act. And what that did was create the board that oversees our program and the trust, the CalABLE program trust. We are a national program. So that means that we can accept residents from out of state are welcome to enroll. That's vice versa for, Californians can also look at other out of state plans, and we can talk a little bit about why they might look at an out of state plan as opposed to California. We are our own state agency, the California ABLE Act Board. But as I said, we report to a 7-member board, and that board is laid out in statute. It has some representatives from our financial oversight agencies here in California. So the state treasurer's office, where we're housed, state controller is on our board, Department of Finance. But where we're a little bit different from other states is that we also have representatives from the state agencies that oversee disability services and means-tested programs. So we have Department of Rehabilitation sits on our board, the State Independent Living Council, Department of Developmental Services, State Council on Developmental Disabilities. So that's been instrumental in really helping us form the program, because as we've gotten up to speed, we've really used their expertise and their guidance into how to include the disability community in creating this program. A lot of people just out the gate kind of did this. We spent a lot of time, communicating with stakeholders. We had about 200 stakeholder meetings before we actually launched the program, so we could build a program that would really serve their needs. We launched in December, and we now we're about almost 4 months from launch. We have a little bit over 1,000 accounts, which is really good as compared to other states. A lot of states have had a pretty slow uptake. This is a brand new program. What we're learning is that a lot of people are kind of skeptical. They have sometimes a fear of government programs, not a lot of trust, and especially something like this where they're worried about jeopardizing their benefits. So I talk to people and they still can't believe I can actually save above $2,000 to keep my benefits. Don't believe it, so we've had to do a lot of education and a lot of trust building, and that goes across the country. These accounts have been very slow to grow, and for us to have a really sustainable ABLE industry, we need to get a significant influx of accounts into the industry. So I just put this up all the time really quick because, again, we didn't do this in a vacuum. Here's our mission and values. We actually vetted these with our participants. This isn't something we came up with in a conference room. Again, what I would highlight here is that trust factor, really trying to build trust with the community, and also collaboration. And so we are an agency of 3 people based in Sacramento. We have, because ABLE accounts are available to all kinds of disability groups, we have a huge task in educating potential stakeholders. And so collaborating with our partner agencies, social services, all of the different state agencies, as well as disability advocacy groups and service providers has been really crucial for us. Okay, so let's get into some nuts and bolts. Who's eligible? The federal law says that a person who developed their disability before the age of 26 is eligible for an ABLE account. So a couple of things with this. People always ask, why 26? This was an arbitrary number. This was a federal bill, and as it made its way through the through Congress, as they did different compromises, the thought was if you let everybody with a disability participate in a tax advantage program, they saw that as a significant loss of tax revenue. And so they capped that age of onset at 26. excludes obviously a lot of people who, developed their disability after the age of 26. There is right now a federal bill that's making its way through Congress that would actually raise the age from 26 to 46, which I've highlighted in an upcoming slide. It's called the ABLE Age Adjustment Act. We really are trying to get people to advocate for that because that would just really expand the pool of people who are eligible. And the other thing to keep in mind with the age 26 is that this isn't necessarily diagnosis driven. You don't have to necessarily have been diagnosed by 26. It's the age of onset. So an example I give, especially with some mental health conditions, say a person is diagnosed with schizophrenia at age 30, but obviously there were indicators that, the onset clearly began before that time and likely before age 26. In that case, a person could actually do what's called self-certification. So they could go to a doctor and they would have, it's essentially a doctor's note. A physician would write a note that says, this person has this disability and it started before the age of 26, and they would be considered qualified. Yeah, I think that's all I want to say about the age 26. You don't also have to have been receiving benefits by age 26 or at all. Now, assuming you meet the age criteria and you're also eligible or receiving SSI or SSDI, you automatically qualify for an ABLE account. But if you don't, you're not eligible for benefits or receiving benefits, again, you would go through that self-certification process, which is just essentially the doctor's note. A word about the doctor's note, we don't collect those. There's HIPAA laws around that. What we tell people though is to get the doctor's note, put it in your personal files and hang on to it, because if you were ever audited by the Social Security Administration or the IRS, you'd want to be in a position to provide something that would prove your eligibility, because these accounts can be audited by both of those organizations. So our system, which I'll talk about in a moment, is all online. The enrollment is actually online, and essentially everybody self-certifies through the enrollment process. So when you go to open an account, you'll check a box, and everybody does this, that says, I certify that I meet the eligibility criteria for an ABLE account. Okay, so everybody's self-certifying, but again, if you're in one of those circumstances where you need to the self-certification note, you want to make sure to get that. In terms of disabilities, what disabilities qualify? The definition of disability is the one that's based on Social Security's definition of disability. You must have been diagnosed by a qualified physician with a physical or mental disability resulting in marked and severe functional limitations that is expected to last at least 1 year. And examples of those conditions can be found on SSA's list of compassionate allowances or their Blue Book listings, which are easily available online. But, again, if you're self-certifying and you believe that your condition meets that criteria, you're eligible for an ABLE account. We consider you to be eligible for an ABLE account. Okay. So here's answering some of your questions about these account contributions and caps. So as many of us know, before the ABLE Act passed, a person with a disability could not save more than $2,000 without impacting their SSI or many other means-tested benefit programs like Medicaid, low-income housing, for instance. And so now with an ABLE account, and this is across the country, not just with CalABLE, you can contribute up to $15,000 per year and up to $100,000 in total before your SSI is impacted. So a couple of things with the 15,000. The 15,000 number will fluctuate from year to year with inflation. So for instance, last year, the contribution limit was 14,000 per calendar year. This year it's 15. Next year, we might see something like 16. So that will grow over time. Obviously, it's going to take a number of years before somebody can reach that $100,000 threshold, right? When we're maxed at those contributions. What happens when you hit that 100,000 threshold? It says your SSI is impacted. What specifically happens is that your benefits are suspended. Okay, they're not terminated. Your eligibility is not terminated. What happens is that until you spend back down below that $100,000 amount, they would be suspended, but then they would resume. The benefits would resume once you brought the account back under $100,000. With the $15,000 per year contribution, a couple of things, because people have some questions about this. That's maximum contributions for the year, and that's from all sources. So one of the beauties about CalABLE is that anybody can contribute to these accounts. It can be the beneficiary's own money, it can be a friend, it can be a family member. The money can come from a special needs trust, but from all sources, you are limited at that $15,000 per year. And if you spend down in the calendar year, say you've contributed 15, you spend 5, you aren't able to put in any additional contributions. That is the contribution limit. Because you can earn interest if you're investing, say you've put in $15,000 for the year, but you're earning interest above the $15,000, that's fine. There's no problem there. You won't have any impact to your benefits. In California, the CalABLE accounts actually have an overall lifetime contribution limit of $529,000. So, you know, if SSI isn't a concern for folks, they potentially can go above that $100,000 threshold up to $529,000, and they would actually still be eligible for their other means tested benefit programs. So including Medicaid, you know, Medi-Cal, CalFresh, any other federal means tested program, they would still be fine. The $100,000 is specific to SSI. Yes, it changed a couple of times. Yes, so the question was, has the lifetime limit number changed? It has a couple of times. It started out at 371, increased to 475, and now it's 529 for 529. That is because the federal law has that lifetime limit set at the same limit for college savings plans in the state. And when the college savings or scholarship plan changed to 529, that increased ours to 529. We do have the highest account cap in the country, so that is a consideration for people too. Some states, you know, their overall lifetime limit is like $100,000 or maybe something like $300,000. So that's a consideration as well. And yeah, no. Yes, good question. And so that's the other thing I try to clarify. So in California, without getting too complicated, in California's state act, we believe there was a misinterpretation of the federal law. So what the law currently says is that the $100,000 cap would apply not just to SSI, but also to California state and local means tested programs. And so we've actually tried once before to pass a bill that would eliminate that, because the overall intent of the federal bill was that the 100,000 cap was specific to SSI. There's no other state that caps its local or state means tested programs at $100,000. And so we believe it's really just kind of technical cleanup language. But there's been some debate back and forth with the legislature who's trying to wrap their head around this and say, you know, is there a potential cost to California? So hasn't happened yet. It will remain a priority. And obviously it's not going to affect anyone in the near future, just because it's going to take some time to get up to $100,000. Beautiful question. So if you want to go to the next slide, Trent's on it. Yes. So when we passed federal tax reform last year, they passed something called Able to Work. And so what this says is if, oh yeah, perfect. I'll try to repeat the question too. What this provision said was that if the beneficiary is employed, if they're working, now they can actually contribute above that 15,000 contribution limit out of their own earnings. Okay. So say for an example, and by the way, there's a caveat that they cannot be contributing, they or their employer cannot be contributing to a retirement plan on their behalf. So if they're doing that, unfortunately, they're not eligible for able to work. But assuming they are, they could contribute either, it says whichever is less, an amount equal to their annual gross salary or up to the federal poverty level, which in this calendar year is around $12,000. So as an example, the beneficiary is making $11,000 per year. That would be their additional contribution limit on top of the 15, okay? So there is the potential for a beneficiary to actually contribute up to around $27,000 in a year if they're working. But again, just to clarify, you know, $15,000 from all sources, but that additional, you know, $11,000 to $12,000, whatever it may be, needs to be coming from the beneficiary's income. Okay, a couple of quick basics I always let people know about. You can only have one ABLE account. We mentioned this because in college savings, it's different. You can actually open multiple college savings accounts. The beneficiary is always the account owner of these accounts. This is their account, their funds, different from it, for instance, from a special needs trust where there's a trustee that's managing. So in a couple of situations though, they can designate what's called an authorized legal representative. Okay, so say they are a minor, say they don't have capacity to manage their own funds. Say that the beneficiary wants to elect someone else to actually serve as their authorized legal representative and transact on their behalf. They can do that. So who can be an authorized legal representative? This comes out of the federal law, and it's a parent. And by the way, that doesn't say parent of minor child, it says a parent. And so any parent can serve as the ALR, legal guardian or conservator, or power of attorney. We get a lot of questions about rep payees. Can a rep payee open and manage an account on behalf of a beneficiary? Unfortunately, at this time, they don't have the authority to do that. There's been some controversy about expanding the definition of an authorized legal representative just because of concerns about fraud. The third bullet point is something that I've started talking more about because it's a big misconception that we get about these accounts. As I mentioned, these are protected on the asset side. They don't shelter income. So what I mean by that is we'll get a call where someone says, oh, you know, I'm earning money or I've got other sources of unearned income, let's say a pension, alimony, child support. They sometimes think now if I put the money in the ABLE account, I won't take any reduction to my SSI or risk losing my SSI. And that's not the case, right? So again, we've got income tests and we've got resource tests. So just by diverting the funds into the ABLE account, it won't work that SSI still won't apply, you know, the different formulas that they apply. When that money hits, if it's any source of income, SSI is still going to do whatever it is they do on the income side and reduce benefits, regardless of whether or not the money is going into the ABLE account. Now, should you still put your money in the ABLE account? Yeah, we think that you should as a way to start building up your resources. Do you have any question about that? Yeah, right, yeah.
So in that situation, for example, if they earn the money and they decide to put a portion of it into the account, and SSI would still count that or exempt
If it's income, they will still count it as income.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they won't count it as a resource.
Okay.
Yep.
So when exactly then would they be able to put that money in, like consider it as an exempt? I mean, would their SSI money or?
So yeah, again, the money can come from any source.
Okay.
So the money until it gets into the ABLE account is treated just as it always was, right? Once the funds are in the ABLE account, they're simply not counted as a resource. Yeah, I know it gets a little, and you know, these accounts, they're savings and investment accounts, but they can function for a lot of our folks who have never even utilized a checking account, for instance, because qualified expenses are so broad, a lot of people are using these as their kind of day-to-day transactional kind of checking account or savings account. Other people like myself, I'm using this as a long-term savings vehicle for my son. He's a little higher functioning on the spectrum, and don't know if he'll be, going to college, but, rather than open a 529 college savings account and then he doesn't have educational expenses and I have to take a tax penalty, I'm going to just use the ABLE account because it can be used for virtually anything. So he could use it for educational expenses, or if he doesn't go to school, he can use it for just about anything, and I won't take that tax penalty. And again, the funds retain that tax advantage status as long as they're being spent on qualified disability expenses. So next slide, what is a qualified disability expense, or what we call a QDE? The first bullet comes right out of the federal statute. It says a qualified disability expense is any expense related to the designated beneficiary as a result of living a life with disabilities. And it includes any expense that benefits the beneficiary's health, independence, or quality of life. Super broad. And it was deliberately so. So the ABLE Act is, achieving a better life experience. And the thought was, if the expense helps you achieve a better life experience as it relates to your disability, we consider it a qualified disability expense. And there are specific categories that are listed. There's tons of them, and this is just a sampling. Education, housing expenses, transportation, healthcare expenses. There's a host of other expenses. The question we'll often get is, well, what is not a qualified disability expense? And CalABLE and other states don't have, we don't counsel people on what is considered a qualified disability expense. The onus comes, it's on, the onus is on the participant essentially, or whoever's managing the account, to determine whether or not it meets that definition of a qualified disability expense. But as a consortium of states, we kind of have all agreed to some certain things: gambling, alcohol, other things that people might call the fun stuff. But people will ask, can I use my money to go on vacation? Absolutely. So as it relates to the beneficiary, right? So their transportation, their food, if they needed a personal attendant, all of those things would be considered qualified disability expenses. Now, can you buy tickets for the whole family to go to Disneyland with the ABLE funds? No, right? That's where you kind of get into a gray area. You can take money out. You can take it as a non-qualified expense. You can do this in college savings and different retirement plans as well. But, it's not illegal. But at that point, you lose that tax advantage piece. So now the expense is going to be subject to income taxes. You're also going to take a tax penalty on the earnings. And the biggest thing here is that your benefits then become at risk, because if you're not using it for a qualified expense, then you can now, SSA can now count that as a resource. Okay. When tax reform passed, they had a number of provisions that were helpful to ABLE. The other thing is that this legislation has always been really bipartisan, so that's a great thing. I mentioned able to work. Now you can also roll over funds from a 529 college savings account. So really useful, for instance, for a parent who opened a college savings account for a child who later was diagnosed with a disability. Now they could roll those funds over. And then it also gave us access to something called the Savers Credit, which is a tax credit. So there's a lot of different provisions around that. But basically, if you meet certain income criteria, you can now take up to a $2,000 tax credit when you go to file your taxes. There's a bunch of provisions around that. And so that's where I tell people to talk to a qualified tax advisor to get questions answered about that. Okay, one of the questions I always get is, this sounds a lot like a special needs trust, and so which one do I need? And the general answer that I give folks is that we don't see these as competing tools. We really see them as complementary tools. It's just an ABLE account is another tool in the toolbox when you're looking at an overall financial planning strategy. But I will highlight some of the advantages of having the ABLE account. Obviously, it's inexpensive to set up and maintain, whereas a special needs trust is going to have attorney fees, sometimes really hefty attorney fees. With an ABLE account, You know, online enrollment is free. With CalABLE, you need $25 minimum to set up your account. One of the biggest advantages of ABLE accounts is that because housing is now an expense, this is a really big deal because some of you may be familiar with what SSA calls in-kind maintenance and support and maintenance, which means that if anybody is helping provide or pay for food or shelter on behalf of a beneficiary, they will reduce their SSI payment. With ABLE, because it's a qualified expense, now if rent or other housing expenses are coming out of the ABLE account, they don't take that ding to their, it's not counted as in-kind support any longer. So one of the biggest uses we're seeing is that folks are, you know, parents in particular who are helping pay their children's rent, they're either putting their own funds into the ABLE account, maybe drawing money from a special needs trust into the ABLE account, and then paying the housing expenses out of the ABLE account. So that's been one of the hugest benefits. Again, with an ABLE account, you have that tax advantage status, whereas special needs trusts are pretty highly taxed. And so again, you're not paying any taxes on earnings. You're not paying any taxes when you withdraw funds for a qualified expense. Another advantage, again, as I mentioned, this is their money. The beneficiary, to the extent they're able to, they have complete control over their own funds. They don't need to rely on a trustee to administer that for them. And the other thing is that you can open the account at any age. So, you know, all we care about is that age of onset. With a special needs trust, there's certain trusts that have to be established by a certain age. So those are just a few differences. But you know, there's all kinds of webinars that I can help refer people to if this is a big topic for people, is how do I use this in tandem with a special needs trust? And so we have a lot of resources we can share with folks if they have those types of questions. So why would somebody want to go with CalABLE? We have some of the lowest fees in the nation. There are fees associated with this account, and I'll break those down in just a moment. They're pretty comparable across the industry. There's the cost of running the program, and then there's also some investment fees, which we'll talk about. But in terms of overall cost, we do kind of fall in that lower bottom tier. It's, again, a free online easy process. Some people have had concerns about, there's no paper application, for instance. So all of the enrollment has to be done online. Some people have, you know, may not have easy access to a computer. In that case, we try to help them brainstorm, you know, do you have a family member or a friend who can help you? Libraries, a lot of our partner agencies have offered, you know, the regional center, for instance, to help people get computer access so that they can, so that this won't be a barrier. But it is online because anytime you're doing things in paper, it just ratchets up the cost. And so in order to keep the cost low and sustainable, we wanted to make it an online process. Yeah. Yes, good question. You can transact through the mobile app. I've actually tried it. So you can do that, and it's fully accessible. The website is very fully accessible too. Yeah. So in terms of making contributions, getting money into the account can happen a couple of different ways. The most common way is through an electronic fund transfer, or what we know as an ACH bank transfer. So for instance, I've got, and you can do that one time, you know, as you need, or you can do it on a recurring basis. So like for my son, on a monthly basis, I have it set up for about $100 to just go from my checking account. I've linked my checking account to his ABLE account, and that happens automatically. You can link to any personal bank account. It doesn't have to be an account in the beneficiary's name or the ALR's name. It's just any, you know, personal or banking account. We did have an experience where we learned someone was trying to link their actual SSA account to the ABLE account, and that did not work well because we require a bank verification process where we do, you know, micro deposits. Someone has to go in and actually verify the account, and Social Security was like, what is this? They weren't willing to do that. So we're already learning things. So don't want to be linking an actual SSA account to the ABLE account. The other way money can be deposited is through a check. So if the beneficiary received a check in their own name, they could actually write or endorse that check over to the plan to have it deposited. Anybody can write a check to the plan as well. And the other cool feature that we have with this plan is something called e-gifting. So a lot of us are familiar with GoFundMe or crowdsourcing. This system has the ability to send a link out to folks where they can actually just directly contribute to the person's account, which is really cool. So a few ways I've seen this recently was my friend has the young daughter who's using the ABLE account. It was her birthday, and mom sent out a link and said, oh, in lieu of gifts, would you like to contribute to Amelia's ABLE account? And she got a lot of contributions that way. Or if somebody's saving up for a qualified expense, maybe like a wheelchair, they could send it out, hey, I'm trying to reach a goal of so much so that I can make this purchase, would you like to contribute? And the other thing that we are going to have soon is a prepaid debit card. This is a loadable debit card. So this isn't an ATM card that has direct access to the entire account, but what it does is it allows you to go in, take a withdrawal, load that amount to the debit card, and then the debit card can then be used. So it's loadable, so that it's as a safety precaution, so that you don't have just complete access to the account. Exactly. Yeah, I looked at this like this could be a really good financial literacy tool for my kiddo as he, reaches his teen years, and he wants to have some independence. He wants to be able to take his friends to the movies or whatever. So I'm thinking, okay, I can go onto the ABLE account, say I want to load $30 to his card, and then he can take it wherever Visa is accepted, which is pretty cool. Okay. Probably the biggest benefit to having a California account, CalABLE account, is that we passed a law here that removed the Medicaid clawback from CalABLE accounts. So many of us are familiar with the fact that there's often Medicaid recovery, especially with special needs trusts, where once the beneficiary passes away, the Medicaid authority can essentially file a claim against the account to recoup funds. We passed a law, people were saying we're not going to put hundreds of thousands of dollars into these accounts just to have it go back to the state. And so we're one of just a handful of states, pretty lucky, to pass this legislation that prohibits Medi-Cal from actually going into the account to file the claim. So only applies to a California resident with a CalABLE account. So that's a huge benefit. If somebody's participating in Medi-Cal, they're going to want to be in the California plan. Obviously, if they're in California and they have an Ohio account, or vice versa, say unfortunately, if the person moved to like Ohio, for instance, and they kept the CalABLE account, because they're a resident of Ohio, that state's Medicaid authority could file a claim against any assets, and that would include the ABLE account. So again, just to keep in mind, California resident with a CalABLE account. And then we also passed a law that protects these accounts from enforcement of money judgments, which essentially says that creditors cannot recoup funds from the account. The investment options are pretty straightforward with CalABLE. We have 4 different investment options. This is another distinction from other plans, or something people might want to check into. The feedback we got from our stakeholders was that many of them were investing for the first time. They wanted to keep it very simple, understandable. There are other states who have a lot more investment options. Nebraska, for an example, has like 17 different investment options. But we were hearing, a lot of people were kind of getting overwhelmed when they went to that investment page, and it's like, what do I do? So we have an FDIC insured option. This is the one people are going to want to do if they're using it more day to day. This is like your typical savings checking account where you're not going to earn a lot of interest, but your money is protected. Your principal is protected. And then we basically have a conservative portfolio, moderate portfolio, and aggressive portfolio. Those investment options can be changed up to 2 times per year. And you can actually, when you go to make a contribution, you can allocate the funds to across different investment options. You're not limited to just one. And if you want to shoot to the next page, I did kind of a screenshot. This is a page you'll see when you go to pick the investment options. And in this scenario, I went ahead and kind of spread out my investment. So I did, 25% to the conservative, 25% to the moderate, 50 to the aggressive growth for a total of 100, but could have done 100% in one, could have done 50-50. So you do have the ability to kind of mix it up a little bit. Here's our fees. This is the next chart will kind of really break down what this looks like, but just as a descriptor of the overall fees, we have what's called an account maintenance fee. This is something you see in every plan. Across the country, it ranges anywhere from $0 actually in Tennessee. Tennessee is one state that does not have an account maintenance fee, up to about $60. So we're we're at $37 for the year. That comes out monthly, so it's a little bit over $3 per month that's just coming out of the account. We also have that underlying investment fee. This is going to depend on which of those 4 investment options you selected. It's called a basis point fee. So it's essentially a percentage of the assets that are in the account. And those rates are anywhere from 0 if you're investing in the FDIC option to 1/10 of 1% basically on the assets. The next chart will actually give you an actual example. But we also charge a state administrative fee that's less than 0.5%. That fee is strictly to repay our general fund loan that we got from the legislature to operate. We were dependent on general fund loans, and so we have to pay that back. And then you've got your other basic incidental fees. If you elect to have paper statements, you're looking at $10 per year. Most of us are doing things electronically, so it's not really an issue. If you bounce a check, $20. And then something to keep in mind, if you are writing a lot of checks from the program, because you can also take withdrawals that way, you could go into the system and say, I want a check cut to the beneficiary, to the authorized legal representative to spend on behalf of the beneficiary. Or you could have a check, for instance, directly mailed to a landlord. You could have it sent to a third party as well. But if you are doing that, you're going to be looking at about $5 every time you ask them to write a check. So most people are doing things electronically. And as I said, no cost to get on the system, but there is a $25 minimum amount to open the account. Here's sort of that breakdown to give people an idea, what do these fees actually add up to? This example is based on having $3,000 in the account. So you have $3,000, you've elected the FDIC option, your cost is $37 for the year. That's it. Now say you are investing in the aggressive growth portfolio. Again, you have $3,000 in the account. Your total fees are roughly $52 per year. So those will fluctuate, obviously, depending on how much money is in the account. As the assets grow, the fees do go up. This is why we tell people we want a lot of people in the plan, because as we get more economy of scale, the costs go down immediately. And as an example, Scholar Share 529 program, they've been in operation 20 years and they don't have fees anymore. So the fees will go down as we get more people into the plan. When people are ready to sign up, this is the URL. It's calable.ca.gov. This is our landing page. And I always recommend that people kind of do some clicking around and kind of acquaint themselves with the different topics. But when they are ready to go ahead and open the account, it's pretty easy peasy. You click that button at the bottom that says open an account. And yep, it will prompt you that you need a couple of pieces of information to get started. This is your basic contact information, social security numbers. The authorized legal representative, if there is one, will have to provide their social security number so they can do an identity verification. And then any bank account information. So if you're going to be linking the accounts, say to your personal checking account, you'll want to have those bank routing numbers and that type of information. Taking money out, we talked about it a little bit, pretty simple. You're going to be logging into the account to request a withdrawal through a couple of different methods. So, and you can do that, by the way, as many times as you want. There's no charge on withdrawals except for that $5 per check fee. So if you're doing withdrawals via check, you need to be cognizant of that fee, but no fees for any of the electronic transactions. So you can transfer electronically again to your personal checking or savings. And then I think the most popular one, the debit card is supposed to launch before the end of June. So we're really excited about that. Again, we talked about that. That'll be easy. You can go into the system, pick an amount to load to the card, and then you can use the card wherever they accept Visa. By the way, we don't ask you what you're spending your money on. IRS, as I said, has the ability to audit. So we do tell people to keep receipts and kind of track their expenses, but we are not going to be checking expenses or maintaining receipts. Yeah. Perfect. Yes. Yeah. So with the prepaid debit, you're talking about with the prepaid debit card or just the system in general? Yeah. So you will be able to print. You could go into the system and print out a record of your withdrawals. You would have to categorize them. So it doesn't have the ability to like do a memo or anything like that, but you can print everything out. Some people are doing that. As soon as they make a withdrawal, they'll kind of print the page and they'll make a note for what it was. With the prepaid card, it'll be pretty easy. If you're mostly using the prepaid card, you'll get a bank state or a card statement like you do every month, and that will have more detail. And so that will be something that people can hang on to help prove expenses. We have a really great customer call center. They, even though CalABLE is new, they're not new to ABLE. They've actually been servicing other ABLE plans for the last 3 years. They're really good about walking people through the enrollment process if they get stuck, if they have a question, they're confused. Very patient. We've had really good feedback so far from them. They're open 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, Pacific time. Contact information is there. And a couple of other resources I always like to give people really quick. One is the ABLE National Resource Center. So this is a nonprofit organization that came out of the National Disability Institute in DC, and they were really a resource for all of the states as we were launching our ABLE programs. They have everything there is to know there about ABLE and how it works. So tons of resources. They have pages upon pages of webinars, which I've found really useful. Again, really specific topics like strategies for funding your ABLE account or how to use the ABLE account with a special needs trust. They also have a state comparison tool. So if you're interested in what other states are offering, they have a chart where you can select a handful of states. They'll have a drop down that shows, here's their fees, here's their investment options, here's their different features that people can kind of do some, comparing. And the other resource I always point people to as well is Disability Benefits 101, which has just a ton of information in real layman's terms, plain English about the different disability benefits we have here in California. But why I really like it is, sometimes I'm giving this presentation and people say, this all sounds great, but I'm really limited, in making money. And, I'm trying to make that choice about working versus not working and how that, interplays with my benefits. And we want to tell people that they can work. And so this is a great site for people who are working, thinking about going to work, that can help them really as a planning tool, make some of those decisions and learn also about work incentives so that they can learn about how they can receive their benefits and also work. We're going to be doing ongoing legislation, as I mentioned, to improve this program. I talked briefly about the federal act. That's something that we're really trying to get people to advocate for. At the state level, we are trying to pursue a tax deduction for people who are contributing to the CalABLE account. There are about 10 other states who do offer a tax incentive of some sort to their residents. This would be huge for people who are contributing to be able to take a tax deduction. So there is a bill that's making its way through the legislature right now, AB 416. There's another kind of technical bill that we're working on right now that would allow, so I mentioned now we can have rollovers from 529 college savings to ABLE, but because it was the result of federal tax reform, we have to achieve what's called tax conformity so that our state tax law conforms to the federal law. So for instance, if somebody was going to today try to transfer their account over, they would be free from any federal tax penalty, but they would be looking at a state tax penalty. And so we're trying to pass this bill to eliminate that. And Outreach, as I mentioned, we need a lot of help getting the word out. There's so many people that could be taking advantage of this tool, but just don't have the information. We take kind of a regional approach, and so if there are groups in other areas of the state, we try to kind of lump them together and then get out. But if you're aware of a group who would like to host a meeting, by all means, let me know. I coordinate outreach for the program. We have other ways for people to get involved. We have a couple of advisory councils that try to meet a couple of times a year where we talk about what's going on with ABLE, CalABLE, but that's also really a way for us to get feedback on the program. So this isn't a one and done. We know this is going to evolve. We want to really hear, how is this working for people? Are they running into any obstacles? What's working, what's not? And I am also launching a CalABLE ambassador program. So this will be getting some really, interested individuals, activist type people who are either using the program, they're passionate about ABLE accounts and they want to help us get the word out. Maybe they have, their own networks, they're associated with an organization or a parent group. Maybe they just want to post things on social media. We'll be launching that program in a couple months, and people who are interested can get in touch with me about that. We're on social media. We're pretty active on social media, so you'll find us on all those places. And that is it. This is our contact information. I will say I do pride ourselves on the fact that, that people have so many questions about how this interacts with benefits, and we pride ourselves on customer service and really being a resource to folks. We pick up the phone every time, so people have questions, they just pick up the phone, give us a call, and we can assist them. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have. Good questions already. Okay. Exactly. Yeah, if they run into any issue at all, they can contact me directly or us in the office directly. Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks so much for having me and for coming. Thanks.